have my new battery. It's not actually bolted down yet, but in place, and now I'm gonna run the wires and get this thing so that I can start it up. I have to put on the fuel filter, so I'll either put it at the original place or maybe on the firewall. Got to do a fuel filter and then ready to start this up. I have some heater core hose which I'll run from here to the other side, and it'd be just a loop right now, but that's what I'm going to work on this weekend. A couple things that I've done. I put my fuel filter there. This is only temporary just because I'm fueling it from this diesel container here. Of course the tanks will be in the back of the vehicle, but for now this is going to be good. But the fuel filter itself is permanently mounted here. I went ahead and reused the original mount, although I modified it some. But it's mounted here, and this is a standard filter. I am going to now connect the battery to the starter and get it ready to actually start up. I have filled it full of water, and in order to do that I had to, of course, make this heater core hose meet to the other side. So what I did is just, for now, I have it just coiled up in here. Of course there'll be a heater core in here, but for right now that's good. And that's really it. Getting close to being able to fire it up. Alright, some further steps. I have primed the fuel line. I also connected the starter. Not permanently. I'm going to actually mount that nicely along the firewall there when I'm done, but for now I just stuck it here. Connected the starter, and then I removed this turbo oil feed and then cranked the starter until I could get oil through here, just to make sure that I had pushed oil up all the way through. And now also over there, so I took the bleeder off the top there and connected a hose and then cranked to make sure that I had oil all the way through the filter. So just to make sure that the engine is not starved of oil. I don't have the ECM connected. I haven't connected the ECM up at all yet, but I can easily crank it over now. Of course, I still have to cover this up. This is the old EGR port. I have to cover it up, but I have one of these, which is what it used to be connected to it, so I'll weld a plate on that and use that. But for now, for starting it, I'm not going to worry about it. So now the last thing I need to do, the very last thing, is to connect up the ECM. So I'm going to finish up the wiring in the ECM, and I'll be ready to actually fire it up for the first time. Alright, so let's get this engine up started. So I have the fuel pump connected. The fuel pump is pumping at the moment, so I know my fuel system is pressurized. I've already bled all of the oil through this turbo supply line. And in here I have, looks like a mess, but in here I've got the 219 relay connected, and this is the equivalent, just like last time, of putting the key in the ignition and turning it on. As soon as I connect this, the power goes to the ECM. The ECM then turns on relay number 219, which supplies the main power to the ECM. At this point, it's as if the ignition is on. And then this wire just goes to the starter relay, and in theory, when I crank this, it will fire up. Still gotta block that off. Now we've got this here where it is a block off port. That should make things a little bit quieter when I run the engine. While doing some of the tests when I'm running it, notice that I actually have some oil dripping here. It's a clean oil and it's coming from between the tandem pump and the back of the head. That's a pretty common problem. I'm going to take the tandem pump off and rebuild it, or replace the gaskets, and that should fix that leak. It might even be something as simple as having pinched the gasket when I put the valve cover on. I got some other projects to work on right now, but I will get back to this and fix that leak. It's pretty common, and I'm not worried about it. It's just coming from a gasket there. Here we have a mock-up of what the front seating arrangement is going to be like. So these aluminum plates are sitting on these metal frames, and then right now what I'm doing is trying to figure out what the proper distance between these two is so that this center console will fit properly, and the total width has to be narrower than my area there, which it is. I've already measured. Something interesting is I was always going to build a center console into a refrigerator, but I happened to find one that actually is already a refrigerator. So this one I didn't have to build, I could just purchase it. So I'll probably paint this black, but it looks great. Look at how the seats and the fridge match up. We have leather with red stitching, and the seats are leather with red stitching, just by chance. I'll probably end up making some interesting like black leather patches to go over here and also over the R-spec so that it looks right. But what I'm doing here is I'm trying to figure out exact placement. Now, the side to side, that's all based on, it has to be a gap so that these two will sit on either side of the center console. And also, since these seats are going to move up and back, it has to be not a tight fit so that they can easily move up and back. The other thing I have to figure out is how far forward the center console is. That's going to be limited because I have this center hump here, and this is my limit to the far forward, although I probably won't be that far forward since my gear shift comes back almost to that point. And the other thing is the height adjustment. How high does the center console need to be? Ideally, it would be the same height as the seats. I think that's about right. The only problem is seat height, ideal seat height is actually right here. So there's almost 2.5 inches here that is a little bit too much. So I'm probably going to end up having to make some modifications. So we'll see. Okay, I figured out my mock-up. They're 14 inches apart is the ideal spacing. There's just enough of a gap between the two that they don't touch. And now I've got to figure out the most efficient way to place these. So what I'm just going to do is flip the seats forward and then move the seat as far forward as it can go when they're flipped forward. That will be my mark to be as far forward as they can go, which would be right to this line. Since they'll be below this, they wouldn't be able to go further than this. So that will be my stop line. And then once I get that part of the frame put together, then I've got to figure out about the center console placement. Either it will be higher than I expect and up to this level, or it will be further back than I expect and it'll be the correct height at this level. So we'll see, depending on how it works out. I'm working on the seat brackets. So I built this piece and I've got it inset. It'll be welded in place ultimately, but right now it's not yet done to the point where I can weld it. But I've got this inset, and this is going to be the back of the front cab body. As you can see, there's angle cut there because there'll be a piece that'll come up here. This is the seat frame itself. It's going to be what the aluminum square seat base sits on. And as you can see, that right there is directly above the end. And this is going to be in this position, just like that one is. I'm going to leave these long for now, but they'll ultimately be cut around here and another box built. So the idea is that I have to have this lower area here, which will extend all the way back to the end, in order for the mechanics of the movable seat to sit, because the pivot arms have to be below the level of that panel, that aluminum seat base. So that's the space that they'll sit in. They'll be here, and then they'll move up to here. So that's why I got to leave this back open. This may not look like much, but it actually took quite a bit of time to get this set, and I had to cut a piece out of here, and this will all be solidly welded, and then these gaps will be filled. So there'll be a piece of sheet steel here, piece of sheet steel here, you know, so it's nice and waterproof, and it'll be all sealed from the base up. And at some point I'll tie this in as well, and I still have to weld up a few pieces on the B pillars here, but I'm getting there. I'm trying to get this seat system set up so that I can actually take this thing for a test drive. Need to finish the brakes and do these seats, and then I'll be able to actually drive it around a little bit. So I doing a test fit to see how the seat's gonna turn out, and I think I've got it where I need it to be. So it's basically 3 inches above the base here, and 3 inches from the back. That gives me good driving position at the center, and shorter people can go forward and longer people can go back. And yeah, I think it's going to be good. So I'm probably going to not use the single piece from the front all the way to the back here. I'm probably going to make this go up to here and then go forward, and also a piece come over to the side. And I'll have to weld one onto that side, but I'm pretty happy with the seating arrangements there. The center console is going to end up being higher than I really would like it because of that hump there. I don't want to put it all the way back to here, I don't think, so I'm probably going to end up having to raise it up. I will do some tests and see how things turn out. I might end up putting it here, but yeah, if it has to be a little higher because of this hump, then it has to be. Here we go with this piece here. It's not welded in place. It did twist a bit when I was welding it together, so I'll have to straighten it out as I weld it in place, but these will be welded to the front. They'll continue past to make the back box once I have the back cab done. But this will give me the point where I can actually bolt the seats down temporarily for when I'm using it for now. They'll ultimately be connected to the swivel, so the mount will change, but that'll let me to actually finalize the seating position and start working on the dash then. Getting there. I get this all finished and welded in place.